begins with an equal wedding, and this is one of the big changes, of course, for LGBTQ plus people, that this is a possibility, and it's a possibility that many of us just never thought would happen. But the good thing is it's not compulsory. You don't have to get married, because Rilke would not want to do that. But I wanted to begin with this image of an equal wedding, and the image of a couple who have been together for a very long time, and now they're tying the knot, and their friends are with them, and they're in a very beautiful place. They're in the Glasgow Art Club, because, as I say, Rilke is a lone wolf, but I wanted to have that acknowledgement that there are relationships that go on for a long time. Some things change, some things never change. The grooms were about to cut the cake when I caught sight of Jojo lurching through the wedding guests, a bashed-up puppet on badly mended strings, head nodding, knees loose. I raised my third glass of fizz to my lips and kept my eyes on the grooms, hoping Jojo would take the hint and piss off. But there was no escaping Jojo. He waved a hand and made a beeline for me, with an urgency that suggested the streets beyond the Glasgow Art Club were teeming with military insurgents or zombies on a spree. Jojo was out of breath and wheezing whiskey by the time he got to my side. He put a hand on my shoulder. Christ, there should be a limit on how many tartans are allowed in one room. The two bobbies had gone for a traditional theme. The art club looked like a boozy gathering of clan prodigals made good, an oversweet whiskey liqueur advert of plaid and heather, gillybrogues and fluffed up sporrans. Bobby McAndrew had gone full Bonnie Prince Charlie with a lace jab-up and cuffs. Bobby Burns had settled on a bow tie and the same tartan as his kilt. I was in no position to judge. The Bobbies had been good to me, and I was shown my respect by wearing a Harris tweed jacket and black watch trews. I whispered, "Glad to see you doing your bit for sobriety." Jojo was a tartan-free zone. He was wearing a rumpled black suit over a white shirt. His funeral tie was loosely knotted around his neck. It might have been part of a Reservoir Dogs style decision, or the only tie he could find. Or maybe it was his own funeral Jojo was anticipating. His skin was grey, the bags under his eyes a blue-black cascade. Jojo propped himself against the wall, sending an oil painting skew whiff. The naked woman in the picture had been admiring herself in a handheld silver mirror when someone, the painter presumably, had interrupted her. She was half turned to face the intruder, revealing the full stretch of her bare back. The painter had paid special attention to her spine, the ridge of vertebrae beneath her skin that led down to a hint of cleft. The painting invited you to imagine what happened next, fight or fuck. Jojo turned to see what he was leaning against and snorted, bare arsed in an expression like butter wouldn't melt. The Bobbies had already given speeches testifying their love for each other. Now they were fiddling with the two plastic grooms from the top of the cake, amusing their guests by casting aspersions on the white fondant icing. There were no parents of the groom in attendance. Bobby McAndrew's wee mammy, as he had always called her, had passed away 6 months before, and Bobby Burns's relatives fell into the never-to-be-mentioned category. Bobby McAndrew gave me a stern look, and I nodded, trying to convey that I would keep Jojo in order. Bobby Burns put an arm around his new husband and called the assembled guests his chosen family. Equal weddings, surrogates, gay community, queer allies, trans rights, drag queens spilling the tea on primetime TV. The world changes. The world stays the same. Thank you.
you never shy away from, making the reader stare down the lens at the world as it really is, not as we would like to imagine it. And you do that really, really well in this novel too, that you take us down the dark lanes. You say, look, that's how people live, that's what can happen. And you're touching on issues like exploitation, homelessness, dispossession, but the whole thrust of the novel seemed to me, it's about what's a life worth? And has every life got value?
Yeah, well, I guess this is a question that we've been asking a lot, haven't we? What is life worth? And during the COVID crisis, I don't know about everybody else, but there were moments when you thought people are talking as if some people are not as deserving as others. And this, this phrase that we kept on hearing, underlying health condition, and I began to think, isn't that life? Isn't life an underlying health condition? And we all somehow, I don't think I know anyone that doesn't in some way have an underlying health condition. So I guess this is a question that novels often ask, when you think about, I can't remember that fantastic, is it Robert Harris, his first book that's set in Berlin, and it's a policeman who's operating under the Nazi rule. That question of what is life worth during a war as well, when lots of people are dying. Do you still investigate an unlawful death, or does all these things go by the by? But it's a hysterically funny book as well. So
it absolutely
is.
Of
jokes.
It is. It is. It's full of colour and life as well. It totally is. I mean, it's not, again, it's this juxtaposition, isn't it, between light and shade, and people in place and all of those things. And I've just, a couple of times you've touched on COVID there, and that was something also that I found really interesting, because I think it's a dilemma that loads of novelists will have going forward. Do you mention it in your book or don't you? Because it's the elephant in the room if you don't, but do we all want to be reading COVID novels? But I think you did it with a really nice light touch. You just acknowledge a few times that it's there, but you don't have everybody masking up before they go to the sex party or whatever.
Some people wear masks at the sex party,
but they're different.
But I think I've not gone back and counted it, but I think if you were to count it, there'd probably be about
a handful.
Yeah, just a few moments. But I guess I'm also I'm interested in it, because, as I think all people who are interested in the world are, and this book is set around about the time that we are now. I suppose it's within the book, it's perhaps a little bit more behind them than it is behind us. As you say, people aren't masking anymore, but they can see the gaps in the high street, and they can see they have their consciousness of lockdown and not wanting to go back to that, and the joy of moments, as we have tonight, when you can come together, and just that extra joy that seeing people gives you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will never turn down an invitation to a party ever again.
And talking of parties, there are some spectacular parties in this novel, full of interesting people doing interesting things. I don't know how much you want to talk about that, but can I just say I'll never use a chiropractor's office again, because...
Yeah, there's... so I suppose Rilke ends up somehow on this trail, and he does end up at a kind of really... I guess it's like a Hieronymus Bosch moment in a way. It's not you might not necessarily think, gosh, that sounds great, I would like to go to that party. It's a little bit sweaty and a little bit, it's not everybody looks beautiful.
Again, it's a really good example of how you take people behind facades and something, it's this respectable city centre chiropractor's office, but what's going on behind the scene is eye-bogglingly interesting and different. But I suppose I'm not going to ask you about the research that you did, but it's literally like you're lifting up the rug and or a stone, and you're throwing the creepy crawly things underneath. That what happens in an ostensibly nice frontage is it's a metaphor, if you like, I guess, for a lot of what your work does.
I guess, and part of the thing that I like about Rilke and that I like about working with his character is that Rilke's, we all judge, everybody judges, don't we? You meet your friend and you're like, oh, I like your shoes, oh, don't like your shoes. It's impossible as a human being not to have some element of judge, but Rilke is someone that strives not to judge, and I think that's a really attractive quality. Not, he wouldn't look at these people and think, ooh, just, he can understand why you might go to a party like that, and he can understand that actually somebody's age and that the sex party that he's at is not going to look, beautiful. It's not a coordinated thing, and he's not judging of that, I think, as well. And I think that is what he judges as cruelty, I suppose, cruelty and exploitation, and people behaving in those ways. So I suppose his moral code is not against people taking drugs. It's not against people going off and having sex with people that they don't know. He knows that life is short. His moral code is against people exploiting people, making people do what they don't want, that kind of thing.
Yeah, because there's a moment of real care in that party where he sees somebody at risk, and he puts himself out at risk to some degree to try and make sure that somebody else is safe. But I think I always get the sense he's a kind of lone wolf, isn't he? He's an observer more than a participant of society to some degree. He's got his friendship and his network, but he likes anonymity, I think, too.
Yeah, and I think is that going back to that classic detective figure, perhaps, and that one of the earliest forms of storytelling is the quest, isn't it? The knight who goes off, and if we go back to Morte d'Arthur, Lancelot does some bad things. Lancelot has an affair with Guinevere, who's the queen of his king. It's a very dishonourable thing to do, and yet we follow Lancelot and we know that he's got his honour as well. So I think that hard-boiled detective idea of the individual going through society with their own code, and perhaps not investing in society in some ways. So that's why it's important that he doesn't get married. He's not going to have a mortgage and have a house. He's always going to have that ability, whether he takes it or not, to walk away, to pack up his stuff in one bag and leave. And I think that's quite attractive, because most of us can't do that. Most of us get, we gather things and relationships and people, and these are part of what makes our life worthwhile. And yet Rilke doesn't have that, and his life is still worthwhile and still interesting. Yeah. But you're right, he also has friends. And I kind of wanted, I think way back when I wrote The Cutting Room, I wanted somebody who was feasible, and it feels too much if you have no friends whatsoever. So he has Rose, who you mentioned, and he has Les, his guy. Friend, who's, I love writing Les, who's, I think Les still would define himself as a transvestite, even though it's not the most, these are not woke in that way, guys, and Les makes his money by drugs selling, but nothing dreadful,
But that was interesting in itself, how you're showing, that there's different ways of, nobody can fit in one box. Everybody has different ways of living their life, even within some grouping that somebody's labelled with. There's different generations, there's different attitudes, there's different morality.
Rilke and Les have a encounter with two younger people, two younger LGBTQ plus people, and who are more nuanced in their use of identity politics, and they don't. Again, it's the not judging thing.
No,
they're not against them, but their minds are slightly blown by them. These kids who are non-binary, queer, And this is not how Les and Rilke feel. And also, I guess, that idea of the embracing of freakdom as well, which I think happened to an extent, and which I quite like, which happened to an extent when, during times of great prejudice, when people say, well, you know what, I'm here. Take it or leave it. And that forward, pushing forward the freakdom, which can be hard to explain, I suppose. I'm not doing a good job of explaining it.
No, that was a line that I'd actually picked out, because it's something that really struck me that Rilke says. I think it's quite near the end of the book, but he talks about how he's embraced his inner freak, but he can still remember the days when even a look in the wrong direction would earn you a kicking or worse. And he says, my stock of nostalgia was small, but my sexuality had formed back then, and whatever app I used, I had never quite managed to disentangle sex and danger. And I found that quite shocking and quite profound as well, that legacy, that's how he relates to sex.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we can get hardwired in these ways when we're quite young. And Rilke, I think, he's not for the heteronormative life, and he is for equality, and he is for liberation, and yet there's a little part of him that likes the frisson of danger, that walking into the dark and waiting to see what you find, which isn't necessarily wise, but he does it.
We haven't really touched on the prose itself at all, but I think it's a real skill that you have, the way you can make the strange or the ugly or the uncomfortable beautiful, and it's like a sort of alchemy, I think, the way you do it. I just want to give one wee example. But if you're a fan of Louise, you'll know that her writing is peppered with these sort of things. Rilke's watching as a sort of ragbag of traders arrive for the big sale at the country mansion that he's dealing with. Watching as punters dressed against the weather, heads lowered, made their way across the grass and up the drive. It looked like a funeral procession for a dead bohemian, with a raggle-taggle band of ageing friends, scarves wound round their faces, features hidden beneath hats and raised collars. It made me think of something like a Peter Howson painting, the sort of, it's grotesque, but it's beautiful as well.
Oh, that's nice. Thanks, Karen.
I mean, do you have to rewrite, or does that arrive formed?
It's like everybody else. It's like you. I sit and I rewrite and I rewrite and I rewrite and rewrite, and then sometimes you just have a little moment, but it's hard to remember, isn't it? Once the book is done and it's out in the world, you never think about, oh, that was a difficult chapter to write, or that was an easy chapter to write. You never quite remember those bits.
The order,
Yeah, but I think what I have discovered is there's some pieces that I'll write at night. So there's I tend to be a 9 to 5 writer, or 10 till 5, Have a coffee, sit around, think about things, play with the cat. But roughly mainly daytime writer. 5 o'clock I start to think about a gin and tonic, which I'm allowed at 6:30. But there are some scenes that it's better to write at night, and I think it's something just to do with the quality of the sound, the dark outside, and that helps you get into the atmosphere. And I do things, like I'm sure you do as well, this sort of creative visualization when you're not writing, you're just sitting and you're thinking and you're just trying to feel how it would be to be there. So those kinds of things as well. But you don't remember the process once you've finished it.
No, but I think it does set your work apart, because you're covering big societal issues, you're writing in lyrical prose, and you're doing a sort of rip-roaring thriller all at once. You might have invented Galloway Gothic. I'm not sure if there was such a thing before. But you consistently mix things up. We talked about the cutting room and how it changed your life, but and it made waves, and you got that recent vote that it was the most influential debut novel. That's a lot for one writer to carry on their shoulders too.
I know, that's why I'm so short. Because
we used to be 5'8".
Oh, no, I think, in Scotland, we're hugely lucky with the writers that we have. We've got so many brilliant writers, and looking at the festival brochure for this festival, I was like, wow. And I know there's writers that aren't Scottish here as well, but there's just amazing, amazing writers, and we can see them walking down the street, So, yes, I feel that I'm a writer amongst writers, a reader amongst readers, and it all comes from the reading, really, doesn't it, and from the living. That's a nice thing to say, but I still have to take my own bins out.
But I wonder, how does it feel, given that you're a professor of creative writing and you're being surrounded by other, I don't mean up and coming, chasing, but what I mean is just, I found when I did that course, and I'm sure you were the same, it's like you're in this melting pot of ideas, and it's like writing's alive in the air all the time, but to do that as your profession as well as writing,
I like it.
Is it exhausting or inspiring?
Well, I only work 2 days a week at the university, and I think I'm really fortunate in that. So I'm a professor all the time. Even when I'm asleep, I'm still a professor. But I only work there 2 days a week, and like all part-time jobs, of course it bleeds. There's not a day when I'm not doing something, and that's probably wrong, but that's just how it is. But yeah, you get to meet really interesting people, really interesting writers. And as you know, we have, so when people think about students, they think always about young people, and we do have young people, but we have many people that come from all sorts of different walks of life, people that have had hugely demanding and impressive jobs before, professions before, people that have done all sorts of amazing stuff, and then they come to the university and they explore their creative arts, So it's really, really great. I think the people that I get to meet, and also we have the public events program every Monday. We have a new writer who comes, and that's a huge privilege as well, that we co-program this and we get to speak to writers. So it's good, it's all good. I probably should stick to 2 days and not let it stretch a little bit. But I don't know, what do you do? I think when you like something, you keep on doing it. But I should say we're also on strike at present. So we're on strike. So thank you for the people that are supporting us. And I think the reasons that we're on strike is to try and keep those things that people have fought for. And it's being talked about as a strike entirely for pensions, and it is a strike to sort of try and save pensions and stop pensions being taken away, but it's also a strike to try and stop the casualisation of education. And many people, those who work in education, will know that often courses and programmes would not be delivered without people who are on what, quite frankly, are shameful contracts. And that's where the real fight for me is. Because what are we educating people for if it's not to give them jobs and contribute? And actually, these people who are on casual contracts are contributing massively, and it's embarrassing and it's shameful that they don't get acknowledged and get proper contracts and proper remuneration. I can't say remuneration.
I don't know anyone that can.
Paid properly. Yes. A living wage.
I wonder if it might be a good time to open up to the audience, because we've been chatting a lot, but I'm sure people have got questions that they would like to ask of Louise. I don't know, do we have a mic? Yes? So if you do have a question, if you wouldn't mind sticking up your hand, lady at the front, and then waiting till the mic comes, because it's quite a big echoey room. It'd be good if we can all hear.
Hi, Louise and Karen.
I don't think it's on. Try now.
Okay, can you, oh yeah, that's right. Hi, Louise and Karen. Louise, I was so happy when I heard that you were bringing out a second Rilke book, that I actually did a spontaneous happy dance when I found out. And having read that, and I ordered the book in advance before it was actually published, and also it wasn't a disappointment, not in the slightest. I've absolutely loved it. Professor Sir Michael Marmot is your man on the pensions. He's very good on good work. You can Google him later. But my question, Alan Cumming doing the audio book, I'm sure there's a story to be told about how Alan Cumming came to be narrating the audio book. So could you tell us, please?
You know, I am always the last person to know. So I didn't actually know he was going to be doing the audiobook, but I had got, as I've never met Alan Cumming, I really admire him. I so admire him. I admire him so much that actually I don't have a CD player anymore, but I still have my CD of Flying High, you know, the DVD I should say. I just love that show. I love him. I love his work. I didn't know. I've never met him, but I got a nice email from him saying, I've read your book in manuscript. Somebody had given them the book at the publishers, and that he really liked it. So, and then he did the audio book, which I'm really hugely grateful for. But yeah, I thought I'd get a lunch out of it. I really honestly, but that hasn't happened. I know, I probably owe him one actually, but could I afford it? I don't know. But yeah, I was planning what to wear and everything, but no.
There's a lady up there in the middle. Oh.
Hi. So I'm only halfway through the second cut, so I'm happy there was no spoilers. But would you ever think about writing a book from Les's side?
You know, nobody's ever asked that. I love writing Les. I really love writing it, but I think probably not, because I think he's. I'm not sure that he would have enough to carry a book, if you know what I mean. I think whereas Rilke's got this sense of focus, and he will focus and carry through and get slightly obsessed. I think Les is somebody who gets distracted. And so I could imagine like a short story perhaps.
Yeah.
And I think, because otherwise I think it would be like a series of mishaps, you know.
Would you do a selection of short stories of Les?
That's a really nice
eager
question. Yeah, I like him so much though. And Les is kind of, now my granny was not a drug dealer, and she didn't dress in clothes with a different gender. But there's a little bit of my granny in Les, you know, just in that irreverence and and the storytelling ability. So I feel quite close to Les, but maybe a short story. Thanks for the suggestion.
There was somebody there at that table, yeah.
Hi Louise, I haven't actually read it yet, but I will be reading it because I'll be buying it tonight.
Oh, thank you.
I'm really interested in where character names come from, and particularly with Rilke. Was it influenced by Werner Maria Rilke, the German poet, in any way, and how, if it was?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So Rilke, so I think when I was writing the first book, I was really thinking about these detective figures and the parameters of the detective novel and all of those things, the traditions and what traditions you can turn around and which ones you want to go with. And one of the things that I wanted was a poet's name. So I like Philip Marlowe, you know, he has this poet's name, and Edmund Campion is another detective, and I think there's Spencer, the detective, who's spelt in the same way as the poet. And I thought I would like a poet's name. And I think I was reading some Rilke at the time, but also I remember very clearly the first second-hand book I bought. It was Edinburgh High Street. I went into as a young teenager, and I was in these boxes, you know, the ones that aren't on the shelf, they're on the floor, and it was a Penguin edition of Rilke's work, which I still have, and it had this orange cover, and it's a close-up of the poet's face. And he looks deranged, you know, and I think it was 20 pence. I thought, this is the book for me. And I bought that. So I had a consciousness of Rilke, although I've never really studied his work closely, but I like his work and the letters to the young poet. But also, I think there's another thing as well with his name, because Rilke, my character, is tall and thin, and this is like a tall, thin name. And I think it works on the page as it looks a little bit like him. So, yeah, so these different things worked into it. Thanks.
No, it makes me think of a rake, that sort of the sound of it as well.
Yeah, it sounds right, doesn't it? Names are really difficult. Names are really hard. And it's really hard, I think, to write a character that you've not found a name for. Do you find that?
Yeah, and a book as well. And book titles sometimes can be really hard, and it's like you just haven't quite got the character or the novel until you've nailed, because how do you contain all of that in one or two syllables? But you have to, don't you?
And you mustn't have too many flashy names, so, or else it just becomes a bit silly. But thinking often about, so what year would this person have been born in? What's the most popular names of that particular year, Who was the king? Did they name them after the king? And I guess attributes of names as well.
Do we actually know his first name? I can't remember if that's ever revealed in the first novel. No?
He's just one name.
Okay.
He's like Lulu.
Yeah, exactly like Lulu. Do we have any other questions about Lulu or any other?
Hi Louise.
Hi.
I was just wondering, obviously Jojo, you said about Jojo being the same age as Rilke. Did you choose them as a contrast as to where Rilke could have ended up if he didn't maybe calm down his lifestyle?
Yeah, it's a really good question actually, and I guess I'm not sure that Rilke's even calmed down that much. I think it's just that he's not got, it's like Jojo's life is burrowed out of control. It's just burrowed in that way. And thinking about the way, like the storytelling thing, how does Rilke get involved in this task? It's like he takes one step, and then he's taken another step, and then he's in too deep. And I think it's been a wee bit like that for Jojo. He's just got involved in this party scene. He's got involved in this party drug. It's really good fun. It's really, really good fun. And then he's just taken that extra step, and it's burrowed in a way. And I think there's a lot of us that we've had that experience, even if it's not with addiction. It might be with something else, that you think, how did I end up here? Oh, that's right, I took it. And you look back and you think, yeah, I took that step, then I took that step, and suddenly here I am, this is what I'm doing. So maybe not as cold as that, but I think there is an analogy there, a shadow that we could all, if we're not careful, fall off the edge. But we still need to have some fun. Yeah, never climb up the ladder when there's nobody else in the house. That's my tip.
Maybe we've got time for one more question, if there is any in the audience. Okay, well, I've got one then. It's a sort of obvious one, but given that, you've circled round, come back 20 years on, and really enjoyed, I get the sense from reading it, it comes off the page, you enjoyed spending time with Rilke again. Do you think you might put in another appearance, or do you feel he needs a long time again before you revisit him?
I so enjoyed writing this book, and I think I got a great deal of fun and a great deal of pleasure from being in Rilke's world. And now I'm having a great deal of fun and a great deal of pleasure coming and meeting people that also enjoy his world. So I've really liked that. I think 3 is a really nice number. So I think 3 is a strong number.
Exclusive in Paisley Book Festival, folks.
But so I've written a new book that isn't a Rilke book, and I've got a book in my mind that might work or might not work, that also isn't a Rilke book. But I do think, I think I would never write a 4th. Mm-hmm. I think I can say I wouldn't write a 4th, but I might, if I tapped him on the shoulder and he looked at me, then I might write another one. Yeah.
Okay, you heard it here first. I'm afraid our hours is just about up now. We have got a lovely pop-up bookshop just at the back there that Louise will be making herself available to sign books. If you would like to just give us a wee moment to get up there. And I'm sure you'll be happy to chat a wee bit longer.
Yeah,
then,
oh yeah. Honestly, I've been stuck in the house like everybody else. I'm really excited. Now, thank you everybody for coming out as well. And this is a cold February night, and yet it's so brilliant to be out, isn't it? And to see the fairy lights and to see everybody. So thank you everyone for coming out to the
you've
festival.
Been an absolutely wonderful audience.
Thank you, Karen.
This is the first night of the Paisley Book Festival, so I know that there's lots more goodies in store as well. So, please keep coming and supporting these events, because I think we all realise how much we have missed. Especially, I think, for writers, it's a bloody lonely profession, isn't it? And it's so nice to be in a community of readers again and just talk about things that matter.
It's exciting, like all day today, I've been looking at my watch and I've been waiting for the moment when I get changed, and then it's exciting for us to have this in our day.
It absolutely is. So thank you very much for being such a terrific audience. But please, can you put your hands together one more time to give a huge thank you to the wonderful Louise Welsh.
Thank you. Thank you to Karen as well. Thank you.